darling listeners, and welcome back to episode 4 of Mind the Force. I'm your host, Kristine McPartlin, Star Wars fanatic, and the creator of cheeky episode titles such as Anakin Skywalker, From Girls to Gods. It's a good one, right? It's a personal favorite so far, if I do say so myself, and I do say so myself. As we continue our discussions of Anakin, we have another professional mental health condition assessment. Today, I'm joined by licensed mental health practitioner and founder of Body by Bria Spencer, to get her viewpoint on some pivotal moment in Anakin's life during this complex time. I think you'll find that we all have an opinion on a very well known moment for Anakin that we get into, and the other, maybe you hadn't looked at in the same light as how Bria and I discuss it. Maybe it'll give you a new perspective to consider. We'll see. If you turn if you tuned in for episode 3, you listened to my stupendous trilogy arc co-host, Matt McPartlin, and I analyze the second era of Anakin's story, starting with the episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and taking it through his canon arc to the Clone Wars, the animated series, season 3, when he, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka are lured to the planet Mortis and meet the Mortis gods of the Force. His relationships were really heavily on the agenda, from Padme, Ahsoka, to Obi-Wan, and even his undying loyalty to R2. Because you can't put a price on the love of a good droid. An important life lesson for us all. It's right up there with fighting the urge to force choke people who disagree with you. But we're not here to judge Anakin's choices. We're here to understand and analyze. We never judge here at Mind the Force. No, no. But before we are joined by Miss Bria, some quick business. To follow this journey with me, please follow Mind the Force on Instagram and Facebook. And to stay up to date on the latest episodes, please follow, subscribe, and share on all your favorite podcast streaming platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, etc., etc. And for all big Star Wars thoughts and questions, shoot me an email at mindtheforestpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And I would never forget your friendly content spoiler warning. I know it's your favorite part. This podcast is a retrospective on Star Wars characters across all Star Wars content. All films, TV shows, novels, comic books, and video games are up for discussion. If you don't want some aspect of currently released Star Wars content to be spoiled, I go on a turnaround now. Go on, get. But come on back now, you hear? Mm-hmm. Well, with our usual bases covered, I believe it's time, my friends, to get into the meat and potatoes. Let's go. Hello, Bria. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, I'm very well. I'm so excited to get into this with you. Everyone, this is Miss Bria Spencer. She is a licensed mental health practitioner, currently working as a hospice medical social worker. She is also the CEO and founder of Body by Bria. As a certified personal trainer and weight loss coach, she helps millennial moms and women struggling with identifying what being healthy looks like and coaches them in reaching their weight loss goals. She is also the co host of the Millennial Babes podcast, where they help others become knowledgeable about mental health, learn how to cope with loss and relationships, and how to navigate life with purpose. Bria's sole mission is to inspire, uplift, and impact lives in a positive way. That is quite the lovely resume, Miss Bria.
Yes, I wear many hats.
Well, I had another very wise young Black entrepreneur tell me we got to take up these spaces.
We sure do. There
Yes,
is more than enough space for all of us, so why not?
exactly. Um, that's very exciting. Do you feel that you're work as a mental health professional has really then, I guess, spilled over into your work as a personal trainer and your work on the podcast?
Absolutely. I think my career in mental health has, set the foundation for my passions right now, which is fitness and health and being able to coach other women. Um, you know, as a mental health practitioner, you have just that ear, to hear certain things, but also guide people in whatever trajectory that they're in their life. And so having the skills to be able to kind of incorporate that in my coaching, I'm able to connect with my women and really just be in tune with where they are in their life, but also their mindset, and be able to help them identify, okay, like, how can I cope with my triggers that are causing stalls in my weight loss, or how can I view myself in a different way? So definitely hats to my mental health career.
That's amazing. It really is so much mindset. Like they something I think I've realized myself recently is, they say that weight loss is 80% nutrition, 20% like exercise. But I don't think people talk about that the nutrition is like 10% food, 90% mindset. Like it's all mental and your relationship with food and yeah, exactly, like how you're feeling that day, like things like triggers and your coping mechanisms. Like if your coping mechanism is chocolate, you need to figure out what that means to you.
Right, because it can be connected to something deeper. And you're absolutely right in saying that 90% is mindset and 10% is, what you eat. Because if you wake up and you're saying, oh, today's gonna be a bad day, your day is gonna be bad because you already put that in your mind, or if you look at yourself in the mirror and say, oh, like, I don't like the way that I look, you're gonna walk with that heavy energy throughout the day. And you're not going to want to be able to eat something that's more healthy or make the wrong choices. So it's really starting with your mindset, identifying like what it can be connected to. Sometimes it's cultural, sometimes it can be traumatic, and just being able to identify how can you positively cope and substitute for healthier foods. You can still have chocolate. Maybe it just means just having some dark chocolate.
Exactly. Exactly. And like you said, like healthy coping mechanisms. Like if at the end of a crap day at work, instead of a what I used to affectionately call emotional support cookies, um, like finding that solace in the gym or finding that solace in cooking a healthy meal, it's also important. It all comes together.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes, but I think another important question that the listeners want to know is not only your relationship with health and fitness, but your relationship with Star Wars. um, so I sent Bria a emotional condition assessment for Anakin Skywalker as we continue our conversation. And we are in the new era of From Girls to Gods, Attack of the Clones to the Clone Wars Mortis arc. And I sent her two important scenarios about very pivotal points in Anakin's life during this time period. Uh, what did you think? What did you think, Bria?
I loved it. I found it very interesting. So just a little bit, I watched some of the Star Wars movie like years ago when they started to come out, and I enjoyed them, but they are a bit lengthy. So I haven't been able to get back into it too much. I did watch like the Netflix series, which I also really loved. So, but I also, just found the characters to have very unique, dynamic. So to be able to come on to your podcast and talk about Star Wars and the characters and be able to break it down and how each character shows up in their own unique way. I was like, oh, this is it. Like, this is cool.
Oh, I'm so happy you enjoyed it. Oh, that's so great. I mean, that's really the idea is that there's so much going on with these characters emotionally and mentally, and even when I was watching them, I was like, this is Shakespeare. This is some high drama. There is a lot going on here. So I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Um, all right, so let's get into it. I'm gonna read scenario one, which I
Okay.
sent you, and then we'll get into your professional insight.
Sure. I'm excited. Let's do it.
Right. It's been 10 years since Anakin left his homeworld of Tatooine to join the Jedi Order. He left behind his mother Shmi, swearing he would return and free her from slavery. He returns now for the first time, never having contacted her in all these years, and arrives to find out that she's been granted her freedom and even married a farmer. But she has been kidnapped by a violent band of native raiders a month before. He ventures out to find Shmi and discovers her held captive in the raiders' village, bound and injured. She dies shortly after he finds her, and consumed with grief and rage, and shame and regret for not returning soon enough to save her, he slaughters the entire raider village, all men, women, and children. He returns to his stepfamily's home with Shmi's body and confesses what he's done to Padme. He's visibly upset. He views what has happened as a failure, as a son for not keeping his promise to save his mother, and as a Jedi for letting his emotions guide him to such violent actions. He feels his only solution is to become a Jedi so powerful that he would be able to stop the ones he loves from dying. Padme attempts to console him by telling him to be angry is to be human, to which Anakin responds, I'm a Jedi. I know I'm better than this. So much going on. So
Yes.
much going on. I did also send Bria this particular scene, which I'm sure she's seen before
Mhm.
in in Attack of the Clones, episode 2, which many of you will know is after Anakin slaughters the entire Raider village, he goes back and is full of remorse and anger, and Padme attempts to console him. So, what did you think, Bria?
It it was actually an amazing clip and so telling just of the different emotions that, he's going through, Anakin is experiencing, and Padme is just there being present to provide like a listening ear. And she also gives him like a sense of, you're human. It's okay to have these emotions. And at the same time, it's like I'm looking at her and how he's telling her, like, I killed all these women and men and children. And it's like you looking at her and she's like, okay, this is a lot. This is intense. And in a way, you kind of see like, does she want to stay or does she like want to run? In the meantime, she still continues to show up and pour into him, which is so telling of just how us women are when it comes to being there for our partners and supporting them.
Right? It's always up to a woman. It's always up to a woman to save everybody.
Yes.
and And I guess as far as in that moment, in that scene, you can tell how powerless he feels. Like he's pacing and he's conflicted. He talks about how like when he was a child, how life is so simple when you're fixing things.
Hmm.
Like how his mind almost wants to maybe dissociate in a way,
Yeah.
just try to like make sense of what's going on around him. Is that a would you say that's a typical reaction in maybe the aftermath of a traumatic situation?
It is. It is a typical reaction when when you've gone through a traumatic experience where you disconnect. Sometimes we also end up, suppressing the emotions and the thought if we don't have the coping school tools, excuse me, to be able to cope. And so him just kind of going through his emotions is completely normal. And it's what everyone has who's gone through a traumatic experience has depicted for themselves.
Mm. I think that it's very poignant that it's a that he's feeling guilt over a parental situation, that he is a child who was not able to save a parent.
Mhm.
And I always think about the dynamics of that relationship because Anakin is obviously a child that experienced a lot of trauma from a very young age, um, having been enslaved and feeling that he needed to, in a lot of ways, step up as the man of the house and the male figure in his mother's life, and really feeling guilty that he didn't come back in time to save her. And I feel like it's so common with, or I guess can be common with children who have been parentified,
Mhm.
that they feel responsible.
Yes.
And I think that we see him taking a lot of this guilt upon himself when he failed to save his mother, but was it his job to save his mother?
Mhm. Yeah. As children, like we have a sense of duty to honor our parents because they raised us, especially our moms, they're the ones that birthed us. And so when we see our parent or our mother in a time where they need help, we want to be there for them, we want to save them. And so he carries that. He wasn't able to save her in time, and she died, and having those traumatic experience on top of that, it makes complete sense as to why he reacted the way that he did. Was it his job to save his mother? No. But I felt that he needed to do that. He felt very strongly to be able to be there for her because of what he has experienced with her in his life.
I guess where do we I guess where do we see this playing out, I guess, in society? I think about when parents are either getting older or parents are in, whether it's financial constraints, and sometimes, of course, there's one difference when, like, the child is able to provide that, but I think there's sometimes this unhealthy expectation in our society that it's expected of the child,
Yeah. Mhm.
regardless of whatever, like, the raising situation was, whether it was positive or negative, there's this expectation.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes, and do you feel like that can put undue pressure? Do you feel like that can be trauma triggers? Like, where do you think that, I guess, comes to play in our own everyday lives?
I do believe that it puts a pressure. Um, it's if we it really just depends also the role of that child. If you're the oldest, and as the oldest, you just have this unexpected duty to do right, to make sure that the family is doing okay, being able to provide as well. And it can be tough when you're not able to meet those certain expectations, or if you're being told that you're not meeting those expectations. And then there's trauma involved too, whether it's being parentified, or maybe even abandonment issues, that no matter what the situation is, like, you still have to show up in this role. And then it becomes an internal conflict, because it's like you want to be able to have your own life and take care of yourself, but knowing that you're not able to because of the unsaid expectations or the said expectations.
And I love that you pointed out that it happens a lot to the oldest child.
Mhm.
I've definitely known people where that has played out very heavily, where the oldest child is left to raise younger siblings, is always expected to be there in the role of a parent,
Yes.
essentially,
Mhm.
where, like, they almost don't get to be a kid themselves because from a young age they're either taking care of their siblings, they're cooking for them, they're making sure they get up for school, they're really doing everything that the parent should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, even if, for men, if they were raised by a single mom, some it can sometimes become mothers can become dependent on their sons, and they become like the man of the house. And so when they do become older and become more independent and move away from the household, sometimes there can be that, animosity from the mom or not understanding, you know, why they're going in a separate way. And becomes an internal conflict for the oldest son because they feel like, well, I had to have a duty to be there for my mom, but at the same time, how do I balance my own life? And then there comes the, well, I have to be able to set boundaries, and that can be difficult.
That struggle. And and then I think that, I guess, like, let me know your thoughts on this, that in society it's, we're humans are naturally tribal creatures. And when, I guess, your other side of your tribe moves away and you suddenly find yourself by yourself, that I don't know, we do our best to be strong, independent women, Bria,
Mm,
but
yeah.
that partnership, it's a balancing act, especially if you're raising children or you're really just trying to go through everyday life. That, we can go it alone if we need to, but I don't think anybody turns down the the comfort of a partner, the support of a
Mm,
partner.
yeah. It,
And
yeah, go ahead.
no, no, sorry, please continue.
Yeah, no, I agree with you in that sense. We, women, we're very independent. We're naturally strong and we can be shown in society as always the strong ones. And sometimes we don't want to be the strong ones. We want to be able to come home and put our feet up sometimes and just be soft, whatever, however that looks like. And so to have a partner who's able to see that, okay, like you're showing up in the world, so strong and steadfast, but okay, I can show up in ways for you where you don't have to always be that way. That's comforting.
Yeah. No, I absolutely understand that. And I guess that's something that, I mean, if we look at Anakin's mother's situation, she did find a husband. She was, so in the context of the story, um she was sold to this farmer who ended up falling in love with her and freed her from slavery and married her. So she had a partner. She had a partner, and I'm sure she missed Anakin every day that he was gone, but she was cared for. She was in a stable situation until she was attacked by these raiders and kidnapped. And but I guess Anakin being so far removed from the situation, he was basically coming back into this as that 10-year-old boy.
Mhm.
As that little 9, 10-year-old boy who left his mom behind and almost frozen in time
Yeah,
emotionally.
yeah. Which makes sense because he at the age of 10, you're not fully developed mentally and emotionally. You're not understanding, your world. You're still exploring, you're still growing. He was just a child. And so to be able to grow into an adult, yes, you're showing up as a world as an adult, but your inner child is still 10 years old. You still have the emotions of being a 10-year-old boy who was living with his mother, but then had to move away because of his duties.
And something else I really wanna touch on, just I feel like we've discussed how Anakin was feeling and his sense of regret and his sense of powerlessness, but I definitely want to touch on really a toxic justification for Anakin's violence.
Mhm.
Because really what happened is he had a lot of big emotions
Yeah.
with the guilt and the shame and the rage, and he lashed out. And he lashed out and committed this very violent act of essentially murdering, like, a nice little genocide of this village.
Mhm.
And yes, on one hand, we sit here and we analyze Anakin's emotions, but I think we would be remiss to not analyze his actions
Yeah.
in, I guess, a sense of toxic masculinity, for
Mhm.
lack of a better word, just a dysregulation of his emotions, and I would love to know your thoughts on that.
You say that, and the first thing that I think of is his 10-year-old self.
Mm.
When you don't when something doesn't go your way, you immediately just lash out and you're not able to regulate your emotions. And so that's what I think happened with him is that he was so hurt that he didn't know how to respond. He didn't have the necessary tools to be able to respond. When you think about, a mother and son relationship, the mother is there to be a nurturer. She's there to, guide you and instill in you maybe even how to cope and respond to your emotions. Just because we have that caring nature within us. So at the age of 10, to be away from your mother, to be away from that type of relationship, he essentially had to learn everything on his own. And so when this happens, he doesn't know what to do. And we see that now sometimes just with men who are not able to communicate their emotions in a positive way. There's just no sense of regulation. And it does come out, in toxic ways, whether they're in a relationship and they're not able to respond emotionally to their partner and they shut down. Or if they're in a workplace and something, doesn't go their way and they don't respond well to constructive criticism and they lash out. So it's a matter of, okay, it's important as a child what that relationship looks like with your parent and what they are learning because it does show up as an adult.
100%. I mean, in a lot of ways, he essentially had a tantrum.
Yes.
He essentially had a childish tantrum that instead of, I don't know, breaking a toy, he murdered a bunch of people.
Mhm. Yeah. He let his power overcome him.
And what do you think? And I wonder about just as far as this character saying, like, well, he was upset about his mother and he lashed out. Like, what is, I guess, the moral standpoint? I guess whether it's from this kind of fictional situation or even cases of domestic violence or do two wrongs make a right?
Mhm.
Like, I wonder what's the moral standpoint
Yeah.
of these kind of situations. Like, how do we cope with almost the absolute of wrong is wrong versus, the context of the situation? Does that come into play?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because that's instantly what came to mind was do two wrongs make a right. And no, it's not eye for an eye because it's not going to change the outcome. In the moment, you may feel righteous. He may have felt righteous and, vindicated for essentially murdering a whole village, but that didn't bring back his mother. So in the moment it's freeing, but you have to still face the reality of it. So there's no excuse for what he's done. And it's a struggle. It's definitely a challenge because we want to be able to be vindicated. We want to be able to say like I was able to still show up and do everything that I can in the name of my mom or whoever that I love. But also take some sense of accountability like no, what you did was absolutely wrong.
And I think that in the moment when Padme is telling him to be angry is to be human, he does acknowledge, I'm a Jedi, I'm better than this, because we have to not only look at his relationship with his mother, but also the upbringing that he did get.
Mhm,
In place of being raised by his mother, he was raised by the Jedi Order.
mhm,
And as morally the Jedi are a very complex group of people. As morally good as the Jedi feel that their teachings are grounded in, there's a lot of emotional repression
mhm,
that comes along with their orthodox religious order.
mhm,
Pretty much at the end of the day, that's what it is. And they're taught that I mean, the famous quote from Master Yoda that fear leads to anger that leads to hate. And
Mhm.
so they teach like you can't be afraid, you can't love, you can't feel grounded in your emotions because that's the way to the dark side.
Yeah.
And that's a little harsh.
Yeah.
I always find that a little harsh. Um so when he had these big feelings, he didn't know how to regulate them.
Mhm.
And I feel like that happens I feel like you can see that a lot in religion, like very religious upbringings where there isn't a lot of emotional assessment. Maybe there's just more assessment of your whether it's relationship with God or talking to your talking to your minister or whatever it is, but there's not a lot of self-reflection. And
Mhm.
I feel like that's what the Jedi really didn't give him.
Yes. I agree. It goes back to what you said that it's a lot of suppression of the emotions. You know, it's the training your conscious self to be aware of your unconscious self. And when your conscious self acknowledges your fear and anger, um, then it relates to, to be angry is to be human. So when you are acknowledging your fear and you are acknowledging your anger, you look for the source or the tools to be able to address them. And he didn't have that because the Jedi, they didn't teach him that. So he lacked
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, it's like if you're not grounded in the force, what else do you have?
Mhm.
And I think it's a very layered thing. I think it feels like a layered scene even on a surface level,
Mhm.
but I'm definitely glad that you were able to analyze it a little deeper
Yeah.
and see that there is a lot going on.
Absolutely, yeah. It was great to analyze and, see things from a different perspective.
Yes. And and of course, and moving into scenario 2, I think we would also be remiss to not bring up good old Padme Amidala, who is who I'm very excited to do the Padme episode one day, because there is so much to unpack with her as well. Because she is standing here being a supportive I mean, whatever they are at this point, because I think at this point in the story, they've kissed and it's kind of this, like, unrequited attraction that she doesn't wanna give into.
Mm.
And she is just standing there being like, "Oh, you murdered all those kids?
Yes.
Okay." Not that's not a red flag. It's not a red flag at all. Um, and as we move into scenario 2, which is very Padme centric, we move into the Clone Wars years, and the next situation that we analyze is, during their marriage, during their secret marriage that was going on over the course of several years, between the end of Attack of the Clones, to the end of Revenge of the Sith, where
Mhm.
things certainly come to a head, which we'll get into one day. And, if you don't have any more, thoughts to share on Anakin's genocide, we can move into the next scenario.
Yeah, no, that's great. We can move right into the next one.
Fantastic. All right. Anakin and Padme have been secretly married for several years, balancing devoting time to their relationship with his life as a Jedi Knight and her job as a galactic senator. Wanting some quality time away from prying eyes, Anakin tries to convince Padme that they should go away together for 2 weeks so they can actually be husband and wife instead of senator and Jedi. Padme woefully rejects the idea, as she is preparing for an important bill in the Senate and couldn't take the time away. Anakin replies that her work seems to be more important than their love, and she counters that that's not the case, and that they both live to serve the Republic and have their duties. To this, Anakin says that there's nothing more important than the way he felt about her, and he proves this by giving Padme his lightsaber, which Kenobi always tells him is his life. She feels pressured and upset, but stands her ground that she needs to focus on her responsibilities.
Mhm.
So much going on, as always. Just Anakin loves the drama. Loves the drama. What did you take from this scene?
It's it's just so telling, I thought about just as women, when we are in a position of our career where we're exceeding, we're excelling, and we have to make very important decisions. And sometimes our partners just don't understand. They need or want to have that quality time or the attention. And it's like, but I'm telling you, I have to make a very important decision. This is my responsibility. And not understanding. It's like he threw another tantrum. Again, so it goes to finding a balance between, okay, being in my duty and in my power as a woman, but also having a partner who sees what I'm doing and understanding, but are they being supportive? And so sometimes we can be in relationships with people who we think are our person, but are they really able to show up without feeling certain ways, without feeling that they are being discounted or they really not feeling heard? And it goes to show that, all right, they were young, or she was very young as well. So it's also as if she grew into who she is and who she knows that she wants to become as a woman, and battling, okay, is this person form, like, how do I balance it?
Yeah, it is it's always the challenge of women. I don't know if you saw the Barbie movie, this year.
Yes.
There's that great monologue from America Ferrera's character towards the end of the movie where she's just like, "Women have to be everything
Yes.
all at once, and you can't you have to have a career, but you can't be too career focused because you gotta
Mhm.
be a mom." Like, you have to, like, have this constant, impossible balance
Mhm.
in your life, or else society will tell you you're wrong either way.
Exactly. And that's what he was giving back to her in that moment.
Yeah, in this impossible situation they find themselves in with this huge secret, like, that's already a huge pressure on their
Mm.
relationship, being like, "We're married and we wanna be happy, but don't tell anybody."
It's like, where's the win-win? There, she doesn't win.
Yeah, like, what's their happily ever after look like when it already started out on such unstable ground?
Yeah.
Um, and I remember watching the scene for the first time, and it just, and to be clear, this is a scene from Clone Wars.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember watching the scene for the first time and just giant screaming signs of gaslighting, gaslighting. For him to say that, you know, like, his love for her is the most important thing and that she thinks work is more important than he is. I'm just like, "Oh my god, Anakin, shut up." Like,
Yeah, it's like, come on, like, stop it. You're not the center of, her world. And it's interesting because I'm like, he seems to be showing some signs of being a narcissist, where it's not being empathetic to, his partner and making himself the center of her world. And it's all about him. And in the same way, making it seem like she's the problem. She's causing the issues and not understanding and wanting to manipulate her into conforming to him, catering to him.
yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, and you see it. I can imagine seeing it in real life that it's not just work, but it's oh, you wanna spend time with your friends, you wanna spend
Yeah.
time with your family, you wanna make time for a hobby,
Mhm.
or just time for yourself, just time for some self-care,
Yeah.
and as women, it's so common for that to feel selfish.
Yes.
Whether I feel like sometimes whether our partner puts that on us or not, it's so natural for us to feel selfish.
Mhm. Yeah, and it ties back into how society views women and the role of a woman. Where it's right now, I feel like we are in a time where women are all about their goals and their dreams and their career, and they're not letting anything get in the way of that. They're standing true to that. Whereas before, we were just naturally in the role of being at home, taking care of home. If you have children, being at a stay-at-home mom. Or before husband or wife comes home, it's making sure that the home is clean and dinner is cooked. And now we have grew away from that. And so it's the thought of, okay, if I see that these are my dreams and my goals and I'm stepping into that power, um, that innate feeling of, "Oh, this feels really selfish of me," and it's not.
No, I absolutely agree. Um, and while we are definitely moving into a more career-focused era for women, whether it's not even just working in general, but climbing the corporate ladder,
Yeah.
being the CEO, being the entrepreneur, and
Mhm.
like we said before, taking up space.
Yeah.
And and please let me know if you've also experienced this. I feel like sometimes it's so easy to bring that maternal instinct into the workplace,
Mhm.
almost in a way where we feel like we're still proving ourselves. We're still battling the imposter syndrome and being like, okay, I need to be in charge. Okay, there's a problem. I need to fix it. Okay, there's an issue. I need to deal with it because I have to prove my place.
Yeah, I have definitely had those experiences where imposter syndrome has kicked in, and feeling that maybe I've been overlooked and having to maybe work a little bit harder, and wanting to have a sense of a control over the end outcome, but then realizing that, okay, this is more internal. Like, where does it come from? And sometimes it can just be related either to what the pressures of society and how they want you to show up in the world, or even just, you know, again, it goes back to just childhood and how you were raised in the relationships that you've had. And um, if you felt heard or seen by your own parents, or
Mm.
you received any, praise, even if it was just something minorly bad, but having a parent just be like, okay, I understand that you made a mistake, but okay, how can we work on it? That speaks a lot of life and makes a difference into a child who grows into an adult woman. And it's a constant decision to take a step back and go internal and say, okay, where is this coming from? But also knowing, your own worth and your own value, and saying, what I'm doing is more than enough. And that is fine.
Yes, that is the thing is feeling enough.
Hmm.
Feeling like, okay, I'm doing well for my age or for the point in my career or for the point in my education. And it's so easy to get down on yourself and say like I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. It's like there's so much negative self-talk and like you said, it starts from childhood.
Yeah.
It absolutely starts from childhood. Like, did you receive praise? Were you given a lot of responsibility? And it's okay, I can't delegate these tasks. I have to do it myself
Mhm.
because I'm going to do it correctly. Like it's this concept of rising and falling on your own merit.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's become so hard to then rely on others because you become a fixer. Women are fixers.
Yes.
We have to solve the problem. We have to save the world.
Yeah. And
Don't you know, Bria?
yeah. And then we become hyper independent.
Yes, and then it becomes hard then to, like you said before, have those soft moments.
Mm,
Like, take on that support.
yeah.
And, like, whether it's our relationships at work or with our friends or with partners.
Mhm.
Like, have you ever seen a strong, independent woman mess things up with a good man because they didn't know how to be soft and relinquish that control? And, oh, it all just comes so full circle. I'm so full of thoughts.
Yeah, and then it's and then you just have to speak life into yourself also and know that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, "Hey, like I think I just need a different perspective on this." Or it's even okay to say, "I don't know how to be soft. I don't know how to be less independent because this is all I know."
Yeah, right? It can feel wrong.
Mhm, yeah.
It can feel like, "No, like, this isn't what I'm not allowed to do this."
Mhm.
Like, I'm not allowed to be soft or take time for myself or like you said, say, "I don't know."
Yeah. Yeah.
Humans in general are not good at saying, "I don't know," because no one wants to feel stupid.
Mhm. Or
Nobody wants to feel like they've made the wrong decision.
yeah, or feel a sense of powerlessness.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that I also had to learn for myself. Um, I've just always been, hyper independent and a fixer. If there was remotely like a problem, I've already had like a resolution for it. And just
Mhm.
taking too much on my own plate, it goes to say like, sometimes you just don't always want to be the strong one. And since becoming a mom and just going through, my own experiences, even going through a divorce and relationships, it's I was able to grow and learn into and lean into that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to take, a step back. It's okay to do just enough because you are enough. And what does that look like in taking care of yourself and but also finding what being soft looks like for you. And that all takes time. But the most important thing is taking the leap of faith and first being aware, then, okay, saying, all right, what can I do to make things seem a little bit less uncontrollable?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and maybe recognizing that not every day is the day.
Exactly.
Not every day is a day not every day is a day you're gonna conquer. You are not Rome was not built in a day.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and just being like, "You know what? Tomorrow." You can't say that every day. You can't say that every day, but sometimes you will not win the day,
Yeah, and your body will also tell you today is not the day. I think you need to rest.
right? Rest is just as important as anything else.
Hmm.
Like, going back to what we talked about with, like, physical health and weight loss and the journey of that, sleep health is
Yeah,
right up there with just as important as nutritional health, mental health. If you're not getting good sleep, you're not doing much.
yeah. 'Cause you're not resting your body or your mind.
Exactly. Ugh, it all comes so full circle.
It does.
It's all important. It's like you have to do everything, but sometimes do nothing, and
And
we're all trying to strike a balance.
yeah, and doing nothing is exactly sometimes what you need.
Yes, absolutely. Um, if we, I guess, round out, because I do want to touch on not only what Padme should be feeling in this situation, but also like where this is coming from for Anakin, because it's definitely more what you see a lot in his arc, or I guess what I've seen a lot in his arc is a lot of petulance.
Mhm,
He can be a very petulant person because I think he lacks the emotional maturity.
mhm,
And I guess I just wanted to kind of analyze his actions. Like we talked about the gaslighting, but even what I really saw as a kind of love bombing,
mhm.
just to say, like, well, there's nothing more important than the way I feel about you, and to prove it, here's this important thing, like, take my lightsaber, and this is my life, and I put my life in your hands." And it's just like this big gesture.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to know how you felt about that, just from what we talked about with his childhood trauma and kind of his emotional stuntedness.
Mhm. It it goes back to, like, the what I envision in my mind is just like a child just jumping up and down and saying, "Pick me, pick me, pick me," like, "I'm right here." And it's relatable, it relates to his mom and the relationship that he had with his mom, but also how underdeveloped that he was at the age of 10 and went into the Jedi Force and how they raised him. He's missing a certain component that he could only have gotten from his mom. And so now that he's in this, secret marriage and relationship with Padme, this is another woman, probably for the first time, who he's experiencing love, but doesn't fully understand what it is or what that looks like.
Yeah, and doesn't have any emotional grounding
Yes.
in which to navigate this very complex relationship.
Hmm.
Like, there's just it's like a child getting to be with, because also remember he had this crush on Padme for, like, 10 years,
Yeah.
and then basically was able to, not really force, that's the wrong word, but was able to coerce her into this relationship, probably against her better judgment. Like, she knows that the relationship is wrong, and she knows she shouldn't feel this way,
Mhm.
but he's able to convince her to follow her emotions, be with him, marry him, and essentially marry his lifelong crush as his first relationship. Like, just imagine like a teenager in love.
It's a hot mess.
It's a hot mess, and throw in that you can't tell anybody about it, and and there's just so much going on, and, like, balancing that with his duties to the Jedi Order,
Mhm.
his struggles and traumas of being the chosen one, because never forget, he's not just any Jedi, Bria. He's the chosen one who is meant to save everyone
Mhm.
and balance the light and dark side of the Force, so he has that pressure, and it's just who could cope with all this without any emotional grounding or
Yeah.
coping mechanisms with which to balance any of this?
Yeah. The poor man doesn't know what to do with himself.
Poor man doesn't know what to do. Just just right for that fall to the dark side. Just
Yeah. And it's a loaded.
and it's loaded, and never forget he's being manipulated by Senator Palpatine the entire time,
Mhm.
and can't share his feelings with his father figure, Kenobi, and then takes his emotional loading from his mother who died in this horrible rage, guilt-fueled scenario, and then just offloads that onto Padme,
Mm.
because now that's his only emotional support,
Yeah.
'cause he can't search for it anywhere else.
Yeah. And you end up hurting the ones closest to you.
Yep. Yeah, which is exactly what happens in the end. Like, every trauma stereotype that could possibly come out of this situation is precisely what happens
Mhm.
to Mr. Anakin Skywalker in the tragedy, because it is the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker. It's all very sad.
Yeah.
Um, but it's all very textbook is how I kind of always see it. I don't know if you also see the same thing.
I do. I definitely do see the same thing. It's like you have this man who has his gift, who is essentially given this gift and is the chosen one, and to be all powerful. And he's just trying to make sense of his world. He's trying to make sense of how to balance his power, but then how to make the right decisions, but also he has the woman of his dreams right in front of him, but also not knowing how to care to her, to support her, and or just even emotionally respond to her. On top of that, it's his trauma. So I can see how all of that together, it's like he's in a bubble and then he just combusts,
Yeah.
which leads to his tragedy.
Yeah. And I think even something that's come up recently in the Star Wars franchise, with the show Ahsoka, which I don't know if you watched it, but it did touch what I thought very thoughtfully on the idea that, they are at this point in the story, when Anakin and Padme have this exchange, that they're in a war. And Anakin is a general in this war.
Mhm,
So he went from learning that the Jedi Order was about peace and balance and your relationship with the Force and almost that softness that we discussed in a way. And now he is a warrior. Now he is at war. He is having to go into these extreme bouts of violence
mhm,
and aggression and constant trauma around him and the just the chaos that comes with that. So now there is not only his internal chaos, but his external chaotic environment,
mhm.
that comes with war and the standard traumas that come with war for anyone involved. So there's no winning for Anakin. There's no winning. Never at any point.
Oh, this actually makes me wanna go back and watch all of them now.
I think that's a fabulous idea, Bria. You should go
I think I'm gonna
and watch all of it. It's also interesting, and also, yeah, if you've never really watched a lot of the TV series
Yeah.
content, that's my personal favorite. Like, the movies, I love all the movies, but the shows are the meat and potatoes.
Mhm,
Like, the movies tend to mark major points across the storylines, but you find the real character development in the television shows. Like,
mhm.
if you watch Clone Wars, you would come out the other side possibly in tears like I did by the time you get to the end. You're just like, "Oh my god." But that's when you really learn these characters. Like, you see Anakin and Padme's marriage play out. You
Yeah.
see his fall to the dark side through the course of Clone Wars, which I think is really important because some fans who've only seen the movies will say like, "Oh, he went from Attack of the Clones and then by the next movie, he was falling to the dark side. That was really fast." And it's like, no, that played out over the course of years.
Mm,
Like Palpatine was like working him for years,
yeah.
just manipulating him, getting into his head, having him question the Jedi Order.
Mhm.
It wasn't quick at all. It wasn't quick at all, and there's so much to cover.
Yeah. Ah, so it's like he essentially just was being groomed.
Oh, 100%. 100% he was groomed for years. Really from the time and I think this project has been interesting to learn so much even about his childhood and
Mhm.
his early days in the Jedi Order. Because even from that time, he was being groomed. Like, so from age 10 to when does he become Vader? I think at 23? So for 13 years,
Wow.
being groomed, being manipulated, questioning the world around him, questioning the
Mhm.
authorities around him. Um, yeah, never stood a chance. Never stood a chance. Poor kid.
Ah, wow.
Hmm. Because you know what? Traumas aren't quick.
No.
They're not quick, they are slow.
Yeah. They're slow, and if you don't have the right resources or access to the resources to be able to cope with or start to identify like, maybe this is something that I need to address, or maybe this is something that I kind of need to work on. Like, if something is triggering you, it manifests into bigger issues and experiences in your life where you're not making the right choices, or your environment, like you're surrounded by the wrong people, or you're listening to, or confiding into the wrong people, like how he was groomed for 13 years, and um the confusion that he's had because he had this person just manipulating him. And that also was because he didn't have any sense of direction.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. Like where could it have ended for him? Like
Mhm.
where was any of this going?
Yeah.
Which I think can speak to, of course, that it is a fictional story. Of course, the writing has like a beginning, a middle, and end.
Yeah.
But I mean, it speaks to our own lives where we're all trying to figure it out. Like, what's any of our end games?
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't know.
And we don't know. We don't know. Ugh, Bria, this has been a delight.
It really has. Thank you.
No, of course. Thank you so much for your professional insight and sharing your own personal experiences. I'm really happy you were able to take the time today.
No, thank you for having me. It was definitely a different experience. And I truly believe you have made me a Star Wars fan now.
Woohoo! That's the whole point. If I get 1,000 more people to say that, maybe Disney will give me some royalties. Who knows?
We're gonna manifest that.
Exactly, manifesting all of that. Well, let me know if you ever wanna come back and, talk about some more Star Wars content after you've watched it.
Yes.
You are more than welcome on Mind the Force whenever you would like.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to talk very soon.
Likewise. Thank you again.
You take care.
All right. Bye.
Woo! Gosh, that was the stuff. It was a delight to speak with Bria on this particular period in Anakin's story. There's so much going on with him during this time, but it comes to this point where his traumas are still weighing on him so heavily. But as he grows and the relationships in his life become more central to who he is, his traumas are bleeding into those relationships and affecting those he claims to care about the most, as unresolved traumas tend to do. Yeah, they tend to do that. I will nerd out with anyone, any day of the week on Star Wars and feelings, but it's a nice treat to engage in it with another woman. Get that female perspective, especially when it involves female characters, like it was today discussing a lot of Anakin and Padme. You don't get Anakin being who he is at this stage without Padme being who she is at this stage. A complex character I look forward to covering more one day on a Padme Amidala episode of Mind the Force. And, maybe we get more screen time with her. Disney, get on that. Something in my throat. To follow Miss Bria and her work with Body by Bria, follow her on Instagram at body underscore by underscore Bria to keep up with her work in mental health and fitness and to stay up to date on her future projects. Now, on the next episode of Mind the Force, Matt will return to us for our final character analysis of Anakin as we dive deep into the final days leading to his fall to the dark side. Oh, it's coming, people. The long efforts of Darth Sidious, or Senator Palpatine, if you will certainly be coming to a head. To keep an eye out for the next episode, make sure to follow up on all socials and your favorite podcast streamer. And if you like what you hear, please drop us 5 stars. Thank you for joining me today on Mind the Force. I'm Kristine McPartlin. See you next time, and stay mindful.